I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, April 15th, 2025 East Lansing City Council Special Budget Work Session. Do we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Altman.
Here.
Councilmember Meadows.
Here.
Councilmember Watson. Mayor Pro Tem Singh. Mayor Brookover.
Here. Could we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Meadows, seconded by Altman. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Do we have any communication from the audience? Anybody in the queue?
No, there's no callers in the queue.
Okay. Moving ahead, communication from council members. Anything tonight?
Somebody stand up to.
Oh, step up to the podium, please. Don't worry about that. Just tell us your name and you can
Great. Sorry about
give it a
that.
little later. That's okay.
Hi, I'm Mike Caserta, Chairman of the East Lansing University Student Commission, and we're here to endorse a proposal to expand the geographic footprint and the duration of Albert Al Fresco. The current duration of May 5th to August 11 prevents the majority of East Lansing student residents from participating. The live music, art, and festivals and other cultural events that occur within Albert Al Fresco are important components of East Lansing that students have limited exposure to. We believe that expanding the duration of Albert Al Fresco will allow more students to attend. It opens the possibility of student groups participating in events such as musical performances. Additionally, we feel that limiting car traffic for Albert Al Fresco makes the downtown area safer for business patrons, especially after dark. Expanding the geographic footprint for Albert Al Fresco will be able to accommodate larger crowds for students. And expanding Albert Al Fresco towards Valley Court Park will raise student awareness about the park and encourage more students to use the park and attend park events outside of Albert Al Fresco as well. And while we strongly support continuing Albert Al Fresco as a full-time event into the fall, limiting Albert Al Fresco to a weekend occurrence after August 11th would still allow more students to experience Albert Al Fresco and decrease car traffic during peak times of student activity in that area. And with that, we address this sincerely from the East Lansing University Student Commission.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
Communication from council members. Anything tonight? Anybody? Okay. Communication from city manager.
I just have one item. April 20th is Volunteer Recognition Day, and April 20th through the 26th is National Volunteer Week. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to all of the volunteers, boards and commissions, the various volunteers that work, the Environmental Stewardship Program, and all the other programs. The city rely heavily on volunteers. I want to say thank you very much. We appreciate the time and energy that they volunteer in supporting this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion items. Discussion 6.1, which is our only thing on the agenda tonight. Discussion of fiscal year 2026 preliminary budget and fee schedule with emphasis on specific divisions. Ms. Kincaid.
CFO. Happy tax day to all that celebrate.
I didn't actually know there was anybody that celebrated that, but
Former tax accountant here. Yes, we certainly do. So tonight we're talking about the preliminary 2026 budget. So I'd first like to recognize all the directors and their staff that have put so much time and effort into putting this document together and developing all the numbers that you're going to see tonight. But I'd also like to have a special thanks to finance staff, Justin Geiger, Andrea Smith, and Matt Torak for all the time that they put in working with those departments, reviewing budgets, coordinating everything that goes into this document, and just keeping me and the budget on track. So we gave you a lot of stuff tonight, so I want to go through that just high level so you kind of know everything that came with your binder. So obviously there's the bulk of it, the meat of it is your budget document. But in the front, we'd also included some public safety detail for building, housing, police, and fire. So those are detailed budgets for public safety in the general fund. Then behind the budget document, the folded over pages, just flip through my giant book. The folded over pages are your 5-year comparative fee schedule. followed by some outstanding debt information for the city. Then we have a draft of the capital improvement program with the 5-year projected capital improvements. And then in the very back, if you kept it how we gave it to you, we also have a summary of fee change explanations that kind of goes along with your 5-year fee schedule. So the document itself, the executive summary, has a lot of the overview information for the city as a whole, and then we go into the specific funds, general fund, broken down by division, and then all the individual funds of the city. All right. So on to our next slide. So this is the consolidated budget, all funds. So you'll find this on page 45 of your printed document. And that goes along with the budget and brief that follows right behind it that highlights all of the funds that have significant changes in the budget. So budget and brief is a great place to start for all the kind of high-level changes of the document. Tonight, we're going to be talking about general fund overview, the income tax fund. Specifically in the general fund, we've got police and fire, we've got CDBG, DDA, and the parking fund. Not next week, but the following week, we will have additional presentations for major and local streets, water sewer funds, parks and recreation fund, as well as the park CIP and regular CIP funds. So you got a whole lot of funds in the next 2 sessions. If there's any other budgets that you would like to discuss in further, any general fund divisions that we haven't touched on, please let us know and we can make sure we add them to an agenda. We also have a public hearing that we're going to have scheduled for May 13th. Obviously an opportunity for public to discuss, and then any additional questions or recommendations from council can be discussed at that time. And then we are going to aim for May 27th for adoption of the budget. So looking at the consolidated budget, so for fiscal year 26, the total budget request is $174.4 million. This is a decrease of almost $12 million compared to the 25 amended budget. And in your document before this page, so pages 42 to 44, we've got a couple of nice graphics that break those revenues and expenditures down by type. So that $12 million decrease is primarily from changes in construction activity as we're kind of winding down the ARPA and then looking forward to 26 with different construction projects. One interesting item to note is we always talk about how personnel is our largest area of expenditures, which it still is, but we're starting to see operating costs creep up to be kind of right in that same area as personnel services. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion and uncertainty around that area right now, so this is just something that's an area of risk for the budget that we've put together. But those operating costs for services and supplies are starting to creep up to kind of the same level as our personnel services.
Is that primarily inflation?
Inflation, yeah, and I think just as we do construction projects and all the supplies that go along with it, everything costs more for everybody. If you want to go to the next slide. So talking about personnel, as I said, it's still the largest area of expenditure across the budget, and it still has a lot of complexity with 9 union groups and additional personnel groups. Some assumptions were made based on cost of living for 26. Several contracts have wage reopeners, so we had to make some assumptions for the fiscal year 26 budget. And some of those are pending the results of that wage study that is still kind of ongoing, so there's still open items there. When we discussed this during the forecast, we've had several contracts ratified since that point, so we have a little bit better idea of where wages are going to come in, but there's still uncertainty there because of those wage reopeners. Additional detail on personnel is in your document. There is a 3-year comparative personnel summary starting on page 54. Our personnel requests were modified ever so slightly from the forecast, and so on this page, they're similar to what you saw in the forecast, but we also are including funds outside of the general fund, so you'll see some additional positions noted as compared to the forecast. One thing I did want to clarify is the public works position. So They are housed in the general fund for administrative purposes, but their costs are actually allocated out to lots of different funds: solid waste, streets, water, sewer. So of the positions that you're seeing under Public Works, while again, administratively, they're under the general fund, only 10% of just the budget analyst position is the only thing of those positions that's in the general fund for that Public Works category. Moving on to reductions, again, we have the same positions from the general fund that we've removed from this year's budget, and we're also showing an additional position from the Parks and Recreation Fund. When they promoted from within, they left one of their coordinated positions. They eliminated that position when they promoted that person. Any questions on personnel changes? Then moving to just the general fund itself. So general fund starts on page 70 of the printed document. Next slide. Next. So this starts on page 70 of your printed document. We've got a lovely picture of Silas kicking us off for the general fund. For 2026, the general fund budget is going to total $52.1 million. That's a decrease of $1.8 million from the fiscal year 25 budget. So we discussed, obviously, the general fund in quite a bit of detail during the forecast. We refined some things from that process, but ultimately, there's not a huge change in the 26 component of the budget, but the 25 estimates were significantly revised. So I kind of want to talk through some of the differences between what we talked about during the forecast and what's in the document that you have here. So our fiscal year 25 estimates were reduced by $2.8 million. Reduced our use of fund balance by $2.8 million. So that's partially, we increased our revenue by about $890,000. We kind of beefed up our ambulance billing estimates, and then we revised our income tax estimates for the transfers into the general fund for public safety. Those numbers were increased on the revenue side. Then expenditures, we reduced by $1.9 million. 1.2 of that was we basically eliminated transfers to the capital improvements fund for various improvements at Hannah, at City Hall, that we've sort of delayed in the current fiscal year 25 budget and moved to fiscal year 26 with the assumption that we'll be funding that through bond issuance, debt issuance, rather than just straight general fund cash. So that's where the significant change in our year-end estimates for 25 are coming from. So for 26, the change from forecast was just a change in the additional use of fund balance of only $180,000. So our revenue, we increased by $1.7 million. Much of that was intergovernmental revenue, about 1.2. We have an $880,000 federal grant that's offset by capital expense for Department of Justice Public Safety. And then some other various state and local grants across the general fund. Charges for services, we increased about $700,000, again, related to ambulance billing. And then the DDA is supporting the police officer work in the downtown area. So that was a significant increase in charges for services. Our expenditures are decreasing, so we had an increase in revenue and a change in our expenditures as well. So personnel services were going down a little bit. Operating costs were going up a little bit, but then capital outlay was increasing about $1.6 million. Again, the grant-funded DOJ grant is funding about $880,000 of modular and permanent barricades in the downtown. And then there was some drains capital outlay that was carried over from fiscal year 25. So all in all, what that means is we're estimating that fund balance of the general fund will be $16.5 million at the end of fiscal year 26. And that is compared to the forecast, we had a 26 year-end fund balance of $13.9 million. So a better place than we were, but again, a lot of that work was on the 25 side, and again, we're pushing that to different funding sources in different funds, which if it's debt, we still are gonna have to pay that debt back. So it's not changes in operation, we're just postponing capital. Any questions on the general fund?
I have a question. So I understand that by debt funding capital improvements, we can amortize the cost and push them into the future. Are there other reasons? Is the main reason we're doing that to avoid burning more fund balance this year, or are there other advantages to doing that?
I think it gives us a little bit more time to have long-term conversations rather than, burning cash right now. We have a little bit more opportunity to have conversations about long-term changes to operations or finding different funding sources.
So it's buying us some time, essentially.
Yes.
And I have another question about the income tax. We're going to talk about the income tax separately in a little bit.
Yeah, next slide.
Okay, so I'll wait till then. Thanks.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, any other questions on the general fund? All right, next slide for the income tax fund. I'm going to use opportunity to plug, make sure you file your East Lansing income tax returns. They aren't due today, they're due April 30th, so you have a little reprieve on filing those tax returns. And you can file online this year. So the income tax fund starts on page 156 of the printed document. So a couple of things that I wanted to mention. So for fiscal year 25, in this graphic, we show our amended budget, but our 25 estimates are actually coming in closer to $16.6 million, so exceeding our current amended budget. And this is based on what we're experiencing in our current collections, and we've gotten continued compliance reviewing those state tapes. And as additional revenue is being collected, we're also having to collect penalties and interest. Well, we've talked about this before, that we have some discretion on penalties. We have to charge interest by state mandate, but those penalties and interest numbers are higher than we were originally anticipating in the budget. So that's benefiting us in this area as well. For the fiscal year 26 budget, we're about flat from our 25 estimate, so about 16.6 million as well. We're assuming a small amount of income growth, and then we're assuming that some of those penalties and interest are going to reduce, so they're kind of offsetting each other. So we're right back in that $16.6 million area. In terms of expenditures, personnel services, that the large part of that is the pension, required contribution to the pension plan, so that's in that personnel services number. But we're also adding a new income tax assistant position for the budget. We just hired that position, actually. So just started to be filled, but we're going to have that position focus more on compliance effort and expanding that to compliance of non-residents as well. So the state tapes looks at residents. We're hoping to expand that to non-residents. Operating costs is increasing pretty significantly from the prior year budgets, and this is a direct result of the the indirect cost allocation. So you'll see that a lot in this document where we talk about the indirect cost allocation. We had a study done many, many years ago, and because of COVID and how non-normal operations were for quite some time, we hadn't been able to renew that study. So this fall, we went through the process of updating that study based on fiscal year 24 actual results and counts of operations and users of services of city manager, of finance, of HR. So all those user departments get charged out a portion of all of the cost of finance, city manager, city council, HR, because they're a user department. So income tax didn't exist the previous time that we did this study. So because they exist now, they are operating out of City Hall, so they use City Hall space, they use City Hall resources, they use HR. Because they use those general government resources, we felt like it was appropriate that this was an administrative fee of the income tax. So that is being included in their budget going forward.
So those costs come out of the general fund, right? And they get charged to the income tax
Correct.
fund. That
Yeah.
way. Okay, so that's good.
Yes.
Right?
Mhm.
It's very good.
Yeah.
Is there a reason that the pension payment component isn't broken out on a separate line item?
No, it can be. Supplemental pension has always kind of traditionally fallen in personnel services, but we can certainly break that out as a separate line item.
The advantage of that is that people reading it we'll know that how much we're spending on our pension payments.
Sure.
And right now, you have to read the narrative to find out.
Sure.
And the other thing is you have to not only read the narrative, you have to add in the $1 million for the supplemental pension for fire to get the number that's in the graph.
Yeah, I mean, there is nothing easy about this fund, I'll tell you that.
No, there isn't. And the more transparent we can make it to let people know where that money's really going to, I think would be great.
Yeah, and I am hoping that the additional detail that we provided in that transfers out section also provides some of that clarity. I know that was difficult to parse out what was the reimbursement for lost property taxes versus what was going for public safety, especially since all of that goes to the general fund. So hopefully we can provide as much detail as is useful to people. So we'll certainly take that as a recommendation.
Yep, and the new graphic later on in that section I think was really successful in communicating some things more clearly than the graphic did last year.
Excellent. And I'm hoping, that we can be consistent in some of our graphics that we're using so that it becomes familiar to people and it's useful because it's more familiar and they can digest it a little bit more clearly. With that, we can go to the next slide and see that new graphic, which I'm hoping provides clarity. So in that top right section, we have sort of the reconciliation of how we get from revenue down to the revenue that we're able to allocate. So we have to first back out that lost property tax calculation that goes back to the general fund to make them whole. We back out all of our administrative costs, including the new indirect cost allocation and new position. So then we have a net of $8.4 million that we're able to allocate that 60-20-20 to our pension, and then 20% to public safety and 20% to infrastructure. Again, confusing thing about pension is that yes, the $5.1 million that's allocated from the net income tax revenue, 4 of it is paid out of the general or of the income tax fund directly, and then 1 is transferred to the general fund to be paid directly to fire, but that's helping us utilize those PA 289 funds. So we're trying to do things to help, in different ways, but yes, it makes it way more confusing. So what we're showing here is just our estimates for fiscal year 26, but we thought it would be helpful also to, in the document, we have a very similar graphic, but it shows the cumulative amount of all of these allocations through fiscal year 24. That's our most recently completed fiscal year. So with that, we've contributed, so the total amount of net new revenue that we've collected from the income tax is $38 million. We've been able to contribute $23 million to our pension, $7.7 million towards infrastructure, and $7.7 million to fund general fund public safety operations.
This operating cost that you were talking about before, so where is that designated or itemized in these charts?
Most of it is under that administrative cost line item.
In the chart? I don't see
Yeah.
an administrative cost.
Yeah, in the little chart in the top right, administrative costs. If you're in the document?
Yeah, I'm in the document.
So the
The
first,
document doesn't have that little square
It's,
up there.
I think it's that square on the other sheet.
Page 158.
thank you.
Okay, so where does, quote, administrative costs, end quote, fit into the chart you have right up there?
So on that chart, administrative costs are the $992,000. So that's made up of,
You're not understanding my question.
I guess I'm not.
So I have a big circle. It's got blue, it's got orange, and it's got green. And I have 2 big circles. So all I want to know now is, where does this operating cost of, you're projecting $663,075, which colored part of this circle does that fall into?
It is, so you have to take that off of revenue before you get to the circles. So if the bottom number of that chart is the 8.4 million, that's what the entire pie represents, is the 8.4 million that it's already net, it's the revenue net of those expenses. So you take all those expenses out first, then you get to our 8.4, which is those circles, then you can allocate it to pension, infrastructure, and public safety.
Okay, so net income tax. So now I'm going to talk about gross income tax.
Okay.
So out of gross income tax, what is deducted to get the net income tax?
That chart, so first is property tax reimbursement to the general fund of $7.12 million. And then the administrative costs, which is personnel, operating, which are our processing services, and then we have a little bit of capital this year. So that's at $992,000 of administrative costs. That gets us to net. Then we can go pension, infrastructure, public safety.
Okay, well, for future reference, I'd like to have the city manager take a look at whether that allocation in fact is consistent with what the voters authorized. So,
The 60-20-20?
the carving, the operating costs to collect, I assume, the income tax, I'm just curious as to whether the voters authorized that, that's all, under the original vote, so. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, we can pull up the charter, but I'm pretty sure it says that it's net of administrative fees before we do the allocation. But we certainly can pull that document right back out.
Yeah, sure.
So that is all I have for income tax. So we have all of our directors here. We have a couple of presentations lined up, but certainly shout out any questions to them, make them stay on their toes. That is all that I have. Yeah.
So I'm looking at page 159, that's got that breakdown of, for 2024, that had that small percentage that sidewalks got, which is 17,000. Are they included then in the revenues to allocate for 2026?
No, that was a choice by DPW at the time. So we take
Okay.
that infrastructure and we typically break it down about 60% to public works and then 40% to parks and recreation. That just happened to be their choice in the first year, is to fund sidewalks. And
I get
then
it.
since then, it's pretty much just been streets.
Okay, thanks.
I've got just a couple of questions. On page 76, rental income, I hate to send you back all that way, but
No worries.
you have the billboard revenue from Adams Advertising, but it only seems to indicate that that's the Coleman Road revenue. And there's a digitized billboard on Saginaw, which is part of that settlement agreement. There's one at the Water Resource Recovery Facility. I don't know whether that income is also reflected in our budget.
It is all budgeted, all.
It's all in?
But it might be in different funds, correct? Or is it all in this?
It's all in that.
Okay.
So that number doesn't just include the Coleman Road income,
No.
even though that's what it indicates. Okay.
Okay.
And then I got a question on boards and commissions on page 81. There's a little list of boards and commissions with an appropriation for each of them.
Yep.
Zoning is not on there. Is there a reason?
So this was sort of a new breakout this year, so we certainly are looking for recommendations and feedback on it. These were the boards and commissions that we felt like had the most or any costs associated with it. So there are plenty of other boards and commissions, but they don't have as significant amount of costs, if you can count some of those as significant, that rose to the level to include them here.
Okay, and then this is sort of the same question. On page 145 of planning and zoning, there's a talk about, or a discussion of the budget there, but one of the critical elements for both zoning and planning, and probably every other board or commission, is training. Are those training dollars reflected in that chart that you have on page 81? Because it's not part of the planning and zoning budget on page 145. So.
We tried to move as many of the costs related to those particular boards and commissions to that division. I think because it is kind of a new thing, I think we will learn as we go a little bit. So some probably do. I know the what's the largest one, I think is LEPOC, certainly has training in it. I don't know if all of the other ones have significant training budgets included.
All right,
in there.
I'd like a little more information on that because frankly, if you're on the planning commission, you should be trained in zoning. You know, there are training opportunities that we've provided in the past. I don't know if they're being followed up with at this point in time or not, but we should have the money set aside so that it can be done. Okay. That's it for me.
Okay.
That was Councilmember Meadows brought a question to my mind. Will we discuss more deeply the breakdown for the commissions?
We can provide maybe a detail like we did for public safety that might help because this, again, it's very new, so you're not quite sure what's included in this. So we can provide that as an additional item on next agenda.
But right now, there's no page that breaks it down. And
Not
there's
any
no
further
time.
than
Okay.
this.
I got
Yeah.
it. Thanks.
I have some more questions about the income tax. The general fund is 52 million, right? The general fund is 52 million.
Yes.
The income tax net is 8.4 million, right?
Correct.
That's what we allocate out. Is that 8.4 million, does that flow through the general fund? So in other words, is that 8.4 million included in the 52 million in the general fund? Or is it separate?
They are separate, but you sort of have grossed up things between the two because one's transferring to the other.
Yep.
And then paying out like the pension, and you've got the transfers in to for public safety. So there are components that relate to each other, but they are not. The 52 don't take the 8 out to get to the real general fund. They are separate.
So here's where I'm going. Here's what I'm trying to wrap my head around. And incidentally, I want to thank you and the finance staff for your patience over the last year and a half helping me wrap my mind around the details of the income tax. And I want to test my understanding in a moment. But before that, what I'm trying to figure out is, okay, if we didn't have that 8.4 million, right, if that disappeared, I think we would have to pay those pension payments and the infrastructure and the public safety, that's 60 and 2020, we would have to pay those out of the general fund then, right?
I think infrastructure would be shared amongst several funds, but ultimately maybe the general fund does have to kick in to fund those. Certainly public safety, certainly anything related to pension would come out of the general fund.
Okay. So is it too much of a stretch to say that 52 million plus 8.4 million is the total amount of money that we have to spend on the kinds of things that have to be funded through the general fund?
I think that's fair. I think there would be more discretion about the pension, but
Yep.
we know that that is something that we have to, accomplish at a certain point in time. So it would make things certainly more difficult on the general fund to accomplish that. But I think that is a fair assessment.
So then conceptually, the net from the income tax of 8.4 million, if I wanted to know sort of what the proportion of that was out of the total amount of funds that represent general funds, right, then I would divide by 60 million.
Say that again?
Right. So I'm trying to figure out what that 8.4 million is as a proportion of the general fund. So do I divide it by the general fund, or do I divide it by the general fund plus the income tax net?
I would say that you would add the two, and then it would be the
Okay.
portion of the basically 60 million.
Okay. All right. And then, so the insight I had sort of after Andrea's presentation a few weeks ago, I had been bothered in the past by a slide in, I think, a couple of presentations we saw that said that income tax filings are about 10 million a year. And we know that income tax receipts are $16 million a year, right? And I was wondering where that $6 million went. And my understanding is that that is the difference between people who file versus people who as a
Correct.
proportion of total receipts. And the issue is that not everybody files, right? So lots of people have their withholding done, but they don't file.
Yep.
And so that means that we can't account for example, whether those folks live in East Lansing or outside of East Lansing because we don't know their address.
Exactly.
And your compliance efforts are going to help narrow that gap.
We're
Right.
certainly hoping, yeah.
We're hoping, okay.
Mhm.
So, so from Andrew's presentation a while ago, she went through the tax year receipts from filers for a bunch of years. And for tax year 23, the non-resident receipts from people who filed were 4.2 million. So that means I think it's safe to say that at least $4 million in the income tax comes from non-residents. But it could be more, and we don't know exactly how much because a lot of people don't actually file.
Right.
Okay. Okay. I wonder if an explanation to that effect would be useful to put somewhere, because it only took me a year and a half to figure it out. And it's not obvious, right? Because you think that everybody files, but in fact that's not true, because they're supposed to, right, but they don't. And so there's sort of, my assumptions led me in the wrong direction there. And maybe it doesn't make sense, maybe it does make sense, but I wanted to float the idea that maybe there's a place we could explain that.
If I may jump in, I was going to make a point that I think folks have heard me mention before on communication on what the income tax pays for. And I know we've had that discussion again. I just want to, again, put it on your radar that the more, especially at budget time, folks understanding how the income tax is collected, the overall chart as passed by the residents, the types of projects that we have paid for. So really, so folks can, this road was revamped, my neighborhood street was revamped. I think where I'm hearing you go on residents versus non-residents, I may, especially as this gets ready to sunset in a few years, I may think to myself, as a resident, am I getting a high enough percentage from this income tax versus what non-residents are paying? Are non-residents seeing the community benefits as they drive on our roads and commute into work? So I'm just trying, I want to lay some groundwork that, and not to point our communications director out, I may have gone to our Instagram just now just to see if I missed anything on the budget, but I really think residents, they don't like no one likes being taxed. I don't celebrate tax day, whoever, oh, you said that, didn't you? But
Not property tax day.
but at the same time, I said in an earlier meeting, I haven't met a millage I haven't supported. Okay, so with all that context, I think it's really important for folks to understand what they're paying for and what the tangible benefits are. So, thank you for that interjection.
I had one more question, and along the lines of things that may fit in this document or may not. People perceive that property taxes in East Lansing are high, and part of the reason for that is that we collect taxes for everybody else, right? The county and LCC and et cetera. And I know we've talked about adding an insert to our property tax bill that summarizes that so that people understand that issue. And I wonder if there's a place in this document for that kind of analysis. Because it's important for people to know that only 30% of their property taxes that they pay actually go to the city, and the rest goes to other taxing authorities that we are required to collect on their behalf. And I think we can't make that point enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just one question, pretty quickly, actually, because this whole issue of non-resident taxpayers. When we pitched this, one of the arguments that we made was that a substantial part of this tax will be paid by non-residents who get to use our facilities, but then don't have the obligation to support them through their taxes. So I just want to make sure that in your opinion anyway, our biggest employer, non-resident employer, Michigan State University, has been cooperative with you in making sure that their non-resident taxpayers are revealed to us and that money it comes to us.
I'm going to defer.
Is that a question? Are they being cooperative?
Do we know?
I mean, they send us their information every year, so I would say they're being.
They're withholding
Yep.
from, okay.
Okay, and then, you know, education is our industry here. So the MEA also has been cooperative with us?
We'd have to follow up on that. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. I'd like to know the answer.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mhm. Any other questions for me, or we will turn it over to police?
I just want to echo what you said about the budget document. I want to thank everybody who worked on it. It really is impressive. It's large, it's precise, it's well-written. The graphics are effective. It's just, if you want to know how the city works, it's just kind of all here. I mean, it's got to be a ton of effort, and I see, a whole lot of people here who help put the effort into it. But, and I know that we have to do it, but we do it. You do a great job.
No higher praise from Dr. Altman than using the word precision for a document.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Brookiver, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to present you the proposed FY 2026 Police Department budget. I first want to take a minute to acknowledge Diane Schaefer. Diane is the police admin assistant, and while many chiefs before me have presented the budgets, I know that for the last decade, behind the scenes, she's been the go-to person for strong working knowledge of the budget. She's been instrumental in the preparation of the proposed budget and teaching me everything I need to know. I also want to thank Lieutenant O'Hario, who's in the audience today, and Lieutenant Bovey for the many, many hours spent preparing this budget. At the East Lansing Police Department, our mission remains steadfast, and that's to protect and serve our community through fair, transparent, and effective policing. We're committed to equitably enforcing laws, safeguarding legal rights, and partnering with the community to address both immediate concerns and long-term public safety needs. Our current programs are key to our mission. We continue to focus on community engagement team, which includes our police social workers and our neighborhood resource specialists, ensuring residents have access to both traditional and human service-based policing. Our crime analysts in residence program helps us to make data-informed decisions to effectively deploy police resources. We're strengthening our neighborhood partnerships with quarterly public sector meetings, helping us proactively address quality of life concerns. Our officers are focused not only on solving serious crimes, but also on educating the community about traffic and pedestrian safety and enforcing code and ordinance violations that affect day-to-day livability. Our goals for FY 2026 reflect our focus on operational excellence and innovation. These include adding a third social worker to help support our vulnerable population, including the unhoused, continuing our efforts around fair and impartial policing, guided by national best practices and community input, increasing our training, which includes educating our very young department, continuing the MACP accreditation program, but eliminating the full-time position that currently supports it. We're currently exploring options and are hopeful that the work can be divided among the current records and PACE assistant positions. Expanding our PEACE team, which is the proactive engagement and community enhancement team, to further address problem-oriented policing concerns in our community. Collaborating with MSU and city departments to enhance emergency preparedness. And importantly, we're continuing to strengthen our employee wellness program, ensuring our personnel are healthy, resilient, and supported. Now let's turn to the budget. The total appropriation request for FY 2026 is $16.18 million. This is a 5.4 increase over the prior year. This increase is primarily due to staffing costs, training, and technology investments. But we've made offsetting costs by eliminating a part-time neighborhood resource specialist role and the accreditation position. We're on track to achieve full staffing for the first time since FY 2019, thanks to targeted recruitment, new police academy scholarships, and renewed interest in law enforcement careers at the East Lansing Police Department. In terms of revenue and financing sources, we project over $1.4 million and nearly $421,000 in service charges, a significant portion of which is from funding from the Downtown Development Authority, the DDA, to support police overtime and downtown-focused social worker. We're very much appreciative of the support and confidence of the DDA. We've also applied for numerous grants from federal legislators, the Burns SIP grant, and the Lowe's Foundation, totaling up to $2.2 million. If we were to receive these funds, this would support additional safety cameras, facility improvements, and much-needed equipment upgrades. Finally, our investment in technology ensures that East Lansing Police Department remains responsive and transparent. We're expanding the use of Axon. Axon is the system that provides our tasers, our body-worn cameras, and our fleet cameras. In addition, we'll be deploying software like Power Engage, which is a software system used to measure citizen satisfaction, and other software platforms that support community engagement, policy oversight, and field training. In closing, this budget reflects East Lansing Police Department's continued dedication to progressive policing, fiscal responsibility, and community collaboration. We are balancing necessary investments in people's, tools, and training while actively pursuing cost-saving partnerships and funding outside funding opportunities. I thank you for your time, and I'll welcome any questions you may have.
Questions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned that we hope, you mentioned this before, but you mentioned it again tonight, that you hope to be up to full staffing by the summer. That's terrific news. Does this mean that the road patrol goes back up to 5?
It won't happen instantly. So we are, again, hoping to be at full staffing. We currently have 44, and we have conditional offers out to the remaining 7. Those conditional offers have not been fully processed, so there is a chance that of those numbers, not all of them will make it through the academy. We have 1 scheduled to go to the academy starting in May, 1 scheduled to go in June, and then the remaining 5 to start in August at the Mid-Michigan Police Academy.
And then there's probably a year of field training.
That's exactly right. So the ones that start in the August Academy will graduate in December, and at that point, beginning January, they will begin a 4-month field training process, assuming that there's no delays in that training process. So right now we have, again, due to short staffing, we have a significant amount of field training officers that will be circulating those officers through. But if there is any delay in their training, we will extend their training period, which could extend beyond that 4-month period.
So that means a year and a half before we think we might be at full road patrol. I don't want to hold you to it. I'm just trying to get a ballpark.
Yeah, it's looking about a year from now until we successfully add all of those candidates and get them through training.
Yep.
We are continuing to do our best to hire lateral transfers, and what that means is officers that have already gone through a police academy, they've already worked at another agency, they would come into our department and go through an abbreviated field training program, which would allow them to get them on the road quicker. We just had a lateral hire that happened in June, and we just have a lateral hire that came from a department in North Carolina, and he is in our field training program as we speak.
This is great. The only other question I had was about the accreditation. The narrative in the budget document's a little ambiguous about whether we're going to maintain accreditation or not. And so it sounds like we are going to maintain accreditation?
That is correct. We are going to maintain accreditation. We still are working out the details internally to how to juggle those responsibilities among our current staffing while still eliminating the position itself.
Because when I thought that we were going to give up accreditation, I had a whole bunch of questions about why that made sense. So I'm very glad to hear we're going to maintain it. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Some questions.
Go ahead.
For the social worker, and you mentioned the unhoused portion. What does that mean, that unhoused persons are presenting a problematic concern or something like that for East Lansing?
No. So what I mean is that we have a significant unhoused population in our downtown area. We were currently partnered with a program called PATH, where they provided services. But what we have found over the last year is that those services offered through PATH aren't services that our social workers can provide. So our social workers have more training and more opportunity to follow up to not only provide these individuals housing, but also to assist in other manners. So, for example, to help find jobs, help them get identification, help them get substance abuse treatment. And so that's why we valued adding a third social worker, again, to focus on that downtown area.
And what types of charges do unhoused people get right now when police see them, or when police are called because someone has a problem?
Sure. I think the probably most common charge is trespassing. That would be an individual in a business after the business owner or someone that is a representative of the business owner has told them to leave. Our officers do have the authority to come in and request charges or place them under arrest for trespassing.
Do we have those percentages and charges that unhoused people get somewhere? The numbers, like how many times they're charged with trespassing and fined?
Sure, we can certainly get that information.
I was, I'm with East Lansing Independent Police Oversight Commission, and I was there when our social workers came in and visited. And I was wondering, how do you track, or what type of tracking, or what is the ask for their time in the community? Because one of the things, it even kind of sounded like that the police also were in discussion, receiving benefits from the social worker being on the team, like that they could, and so then it's like, oh, well, I thought we hired them to serve the community alongside the police. And so how is that, what's the ask like for the percentage of time that they are spending on the streets, or even, making calls or connections and stuff
Sure,
like that?
that's a great question. And our social workers' primary task is to serve the community and assist in mental health crisis situations. I don't have an exact breakdown, and I'm not sure we'd be able to provide that information. However, I can say that when there is downtime, very little of it, our officers do get supported by our social workers. Both social workers are trained in peer support and CISM, which is critical incident stress management. And so if our officers go to a tragic scene and need some assistance afterwards, they will often lead those critical incident stress management debriefs.
Thanks. And my last question for now, and then I'll, let someone else go, is are unhoused people arrested for sleeping?
No.
What happens when someone calls and said, there's a human sleeping on the street? What happens if the police have to interact with the person?
So first of all, that would be a call that our social worker would most likely get dispatched to. So when the social worker and or police officer were to get dispatched to that call, we may not even have an interaction. There's nothing illegal about sleeping in public.
Thank you. There was some rulings that kind of leaned more into that even though humans need sleep, that they found it problematic for unhoused people. And so I'm happy to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, our social workers really are focused on helping these individuals. And so in a situation like that, the primary purpose of the social worker would be to try to help that person find housing, even if it's temporary housing where there's actually a bed that they could sleep in.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I do have a comment, actually, Mayor. First of all, I want to take the opportunity to thank Lieutenant O'Hario, who's sitting in the back, for running the Citizens Police Academy this past spring, and the interim chief for supporting it. I went through the academy. Our last meeting's tomorrow night. And I encourage anybody who has questions about how the police interact with the public, for example, to take advantage of that training opportunity and go through the Citizen Police Academy. At the very least, go on a ride-along with an officer on a busy night in the downtown, and the scales will fall off your eyes, and all sorts of questions get answered this way. And I just want to note that on my ride-along, there was a call for an unwanted private property owner, called police concerning somebody who was sleeping or just lying on the floor in a private building. And police were obliged to respond. And they showed up and they helped him up and they escorted him outside. And it was freezing cold. And so they kept in mind that he was outside. And they tracked him down a couple of hours later to find him and see how he was doing. He was lying in a stairwell in one of our parking ramps, and people couldn't get by, okay? And he was cold and he was in rough shape. And so eventually they called the medics so that he could get warm and get safe and get a meal. So that's been my experience, and I encourage anybody who has questions about how our police interact with unhoused, or how they respond to mental health calls, or how they respond to traffic stops, whole range of questions, go on a ride along. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions?
Just
Yes, ma'am.
there was a time during COVID where it was less likely that the community could do ride-alongs, but our community, anyone can do a ride-along now with the cops?
That is correct.
Okay.
We do have a couple restrictions in terms of you have to be 18 years of age or older. And there are some restrictions in terms of riding on like a holiday or, football weekend in terms of the officer call load being so busy it would not be an effective ride-along or, job shadowing opportunity.
And then how many people do you see come through for the ride-alongs, like monthly?
That's a great question. Lieutenant Harrios in the back and probably can speak to that a little better. He's the one that arranges all of our ride-alongs for the department.
Yeah, I do all the ride-alongs. We have statistics that we can provide at a later date for you for ride-alongs for the last couple of years. COVID did knock it down. Our restrictions on ride-alongs, that will add a couple extra restrictions. As we indicated, we are an extremely young department with recruiting, and we are maxing out our FTOs and training. So the opportunities for ride-alongs are highly restricted right now. So unless you are a VIP, somebody within the council, an actual active applicant, or part of the Citizens Police Academy, we have restricted that. Now, we will make exceptions. We can talk to you about that if need be.
Okay.
But just because of staffing, and we have to train our new officers, we are very limited. So just to let you know.
Thanks.
Are
I
you
think we
telling
did.
me that my prior arrest and conviction record will not stand in the way of me being able to go on a ride-along?
We do actually, as part of a ride-along, because you are exposed to CJIS information, we do actually run a background check, and there have been instances where things have come up and people can't ride. They go a different direction, but yeah.
So the mayor,
I don't think that was an unqualified yes, was it?
you could just put the mayor in cuffs in the back seat.
Yeah,
It would be okay.
yeah.
So-
Problem solved.
Everybody's innocent until proven guilty.
All right, thank you. Are we all set here?
I just want to ditto Councilmember Altman's comments. I also am a graduate of the Police Academy and have been on a couple of ride-alongs, and that was even on a football weekend, so one of them. And my guess is that was only because I'm a council member that I was allowed to do that. But it is tremendously eye-opening in a number of ways. But in my experience, mostly in the way that our officers interact with what can be a very troublesome 18 to 24-year-old population within our community. So I urge everybody who can do this to do it.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Mr. Bellman, who's up next?
Fire department is the chief first. And Fire Marshal John Newman.
Good evening, Mayor Brookover, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council members. It's an honor to sit before you tonight to present my last budget, as I will be retiring after 30 and a half years. It has been an honor and pleasure to serve the community, and I appreciate all the support you have given me. My temporary My interim successor will be Fire Marshal John Newman, who has been with the department for over 24 years, is a tremendous leader, and will do very well serving in this position until we can fill it. Okay, first slide. Okay, we'll start with this. So I'll review the revenues and our resources here. The first one for intergovernmental revenues is 43% of our collection, which comes from Public Act 289. Charges for services incorporates 35% of our revenues. Our leading generating fund is $2.2 million from EMS services, which is approximately $400,000 above what we did last year, or 22%. We've seen the increase due to our enhanced billing. We are now with EMSMC, which was Acumed. They're a very more enhanced billing service, and we are seeing an increase of approximately 500 runs per year increase. So that's where we feel we are collecting those revenues from. MSU provides funding as we do EMS coverage, and they provide $326,000 for our fire and rescue services that we provide the university. We are going to incorporate funding from fire prevention for inspections and re-inspections, which is new on the fee schedule this year. And there's a small portion that we collect for hazmat cleanup and community programs. We have taught several first aid and CPR programs to the schools and different community members that request those services. The other funding source comes from the income tax fund, which is our 20%, and then there was an additional $1 million transfer from the supplemental pension payment. And that provides our total revenues and financing resources at $8,348,000. Our expenditures primarily come from personnel services, which is about 82.5%. We have an 8.5% increase in personnel services, primarily coming from the union contract, a 4% COLA, and a step increase, and an increase in healthcare costs. This year, we are requesting an EMS coordinator position, which will assist our training chief at this time. Our operating costs incorporate 17.2%, which is a $463,950 decrease from last year. Last year, we had a one-time cost of $500,000 because we had a frame that was very significantly corroded and potential to break, so we had to increase funding to the DPW pool fund. Our capital outlay is only 0.3%, and that will be a request for a sustainable metal shed for storage and lawn equipment. We are increasing our personnel, and we are running out of space in our facilities. We have 2 wooden sheds that house equipment and animals at this time. They're kind of dilapidated. Our total expenditures then are at $14,156,000. If I go to my next slide, I've covered the department goals and objectives. Our biggest goal this year is going to be work with the police department to provide the Stop the Bleed training. This year, we were very instrumental in obtaining the funding to get all the Stop the Bleed bags, and then this year we'll incorporate the training. This year, we also partnered with Michigan Works to provide education and training to one of our cadets. It's a nice way to work with the Lansing Community College, who helped fund it, and with Michigan Works, who paid the majority of this individual's education. This year, we had the opening for 3 people. We have not filled those 3 positions yet, but we're actively using other methods, whether we help sustain people's schooling, education, getting out to the schools and trying to promote people to want to come into our service. We will be providing increased officer training and leadership classes. We will continue to offer CPR and first aid classes. We've had a very high request from our high schools, our churches, and other personnel within the community. We will continue to promote our cadet program for future firefighter and paramedics. Since we started this in 2021, we've recruited 6 people to full-time positions within our department, so it is a very successful program. Our training facility should be finished by the beginning of May, which will provide significant opportunities for our firefighters to work both on their technical rescue skills as well as their firefighting abilities. We hope that sometime this year we can invite all of you to come out and, besides see it, maybe put you in some gear and let you climb through. We'll have tunnels on the bottom where we'll have confined space. We have a platform on the top where we can do our high-angle rescue. We'll have holes in the floors so we can simulate people going to the floors and trying to pull them out. So it will provide a lot of different services that we were really limited in the past. If we don't have neighbors that have houses that we can train on, or houses people want us to let rip down or burn up, we're pretty limited on the amount of training we can do. So this was a very big investment that you allowed us to do that will provide a lot of future education training and hopefully recruit some people, because we have this out in our backyard now. And I will entertain any questions you may have.
Yes, sir.
When you said you had holes in the floor, I thought the next thing was going to be to drop us through when we come out, but maybe not.
We would gently let you down, and then we'll really smoothly bring you right back up. So there are holes that are covered in the floor, but we're trying to give our, it has windows on the outside so we can practice bailouts, we can practice rescuing people out windows, all the types of things that we just don't have that capability right now.
You mentioned the fire truck that had the corroded frame. Did we recoup anything from insurance on that, or any warranty?
I can look into that, but I don't have that immediate answer.
Okay. And then you mentioned the sheds, the wooden sheds that you're replacing with the metal shed. You said we store animals?
Okay. There's big holes in it, so I can assume that in the cold that we might have critters kind of going in and trying to stay warm. No, we don't have chickens, or we're not keeping anything.
Eric, it was a joke.
Well,
Station.
They're in poor shape, but that's what we have, so we make the best use of it. But our goal would be to put a metal shed in, something sustainable that will have long-term use.
thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
We talked a little bit about the police academy, but I seem to remember going through a one-day fire academy opportunity. Are you offering that in the community still?
So I think our one-time thing was to the council members.
Oh, okay. Well, we were lowered
would
up and
like
down.
to offer like a summer camp that recruits young people. It's just a matter of getting the funding, the people, and the resources to do that. But we were looking to do that with some of our outside partners to do that in the near future.
Okay, great. And just like a general comment here, because we've heard from police and fire tonight. But, I think the people in the community who think that they're paying high property taxes should realize that our property taxes are not enough to even pay for our police and fire. So it's an important service that we provide to our community, and probably the one thing that any member of the community would say, yeah, that's number one, we want police and fire. So thank you for all the work that you do and the responses that you make. And, I live like 100 feet off of Abbott Road across from the fire station, so I'm cognizant of all the activity that takes place 24 hours a day. So.
I do have some questions, and they may not be you may not have the data, but I think they're directed at you and maybe also the city manager. So, and Chief Carson, I've always sort of viewed you as pretty statistically wise about breakdowns and stuff. So just off the top of your heads, do you have any kind of a breakdown for us percentage-wise of the number of calls that go on to campus as opposed to the city proper?
I don't have that number, but I do have it probably back at the office.
Okay.
It's not as significant as we think, but I think it's hard to track because unless the people are collecting all the information, some of our people can't tell us if they're students or not. They're incapacitated, they have other issues. So information in is only as good as we can produce, so I could get a percent for you. Accuracy-wise, might not be spot on, but we can get close.
And then, has there been any kind of quantification over the years of the per station cost? In other words, how much it costs at each station for, sort of a total budget?
There isn't, but I think I could come up with that number pretty easily.
So I'd be interested in seeing a breakdown if possible, especially with regard to the fire station
Okay.
on campus. And then we now have what I would term high-rise, although I guess they're Midwestern high-rise, buildings in downtown Lansing, or East Lansing. So, and I know, Officer Newman, you've been involved in terms of inspections and everything else of those buildings and trying to follow up on inspections because things haven't been done the way they should. So can you give us some sort of general idea of to what extent the height of buildings affects cost, ability to serve, fire safety, things like that?
On average, it's recommended that you have 15 to 17 firefighters respond to a single residence, so a single family home that would be involved in fire. You're looking to 15 to 17 firefighters to arrive. Once you get to a high rise, you start at 43. So when you talk about the demand on resources, we have a total of 13 on duty each day. Any response that we would make for a fire in a high rise is an automatic call out to our neighboring jurisdictions for resources as a mutual aid service until the incident commander is certain that he has the resources on scene.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but there is no fire department at Michigan State University.
They do not have a fire department.
All right, so we service Michigan State University.
Yes, we do.
All right, so in view of the fact that they're anticipating some fairly major construction, including a hotel, among other things, and assuming the world stays the same, that would require an additional amount of coverage for us under the current arrangements, correct?
Without any question. Before the city of East Lansing had high rises, the only high rises that we trained for were on campus.
We're on campus.
Those remain, and any additional ones that they add, we'll just add to the.
And among the three of you, do any of you have a figure for us of how much money we're getting reimbursed via the state or university with regard to the fire services we provide? And is that in these documents someplace?
Well, I believe that PA 289 money is part of it, and then MSU does provide the 326 for fire rescue services that they pay
Okay,
towards us.
and where is the PA, the Public Act number?
It's the intergovernmental revenue.
Okay. So on the documents we have now, you have an intergovernmental revenue for 2024 actual of $6.5 million, and then 2025 amended budget is $3.5. What accounts for that decrease?
Okay, so,
What page are you on?
yeah, because
I'm on 120.
120.
and I don't have that page.
So in 2024, there's a couple of things. We received a state pension grant, so that was intergovernmental revenue for across the city, but we allocated a portion to different funds,
Okay.
departments. So that year is skewed. And then, again, there's that lag, so what we're expecting for '26 is based on our '25 expenditures. What we got in '25 is based on our '24 expenditures, so there's always that little bit of lag.
Okay, so this is not all state reimbursement to us for fire services to the biggest state university in the state?
The '26 number should be, I think, is exclusively the PA 289. So that is reimbursement for our services provided to MSU.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Well, let me follow up on your question a little bit. Because we were, Hannah had set up a system that gave us a lot of money for fire service on campus.
Dr. Hannah?
Dr. Hannah,
Yeah,
yep. And then McPherson didn't like that number and started to rotate it downward, which is how we got to the 346. I think it stayed pretty steadily at that number for a lengthy period of time. And then the state was, I think, shorting us on PA 389 money for a lengthy period of time, but more recently has fully funded that, because that is money that comes to us for providing fire service to state property, which is, we have a significant number of state property within the city. So I think those are the sources, and we should have on the agenda whenever we meet with the university this $346,000, and if it satisfies the amount of work that we are doing on campus on a regular basis.
And as a follow-up, the 346, where is that included on the expenditure chart? Is that part of that 3.5?
So you have to help me with your 346.
Page 120,
And I don't have
the
that.
chart you had up earlier. The 346, I think somebody mentioned, is the direct reimbursement from MSU.
I think I said that. It
Yeah.
is
326.
326.
326, okay.
And
That's
where,
explained in,
And
on
so
page-
where is that nested in this?
Charges for services. So that's 2,921,000.
Yes.
905 includes 2.2 million for emergency medical services, and then 310 for EMS coverage to MSU for the NCAA programs, and then another 326 for MSU for fire and rescue services provided to areas owned by MSU but outside the city limits.
Outside the city limits?
Yeah.
Okay. And is that a contract? What is that?
It's on page 122, George.
I believe there is a contract between the city and MSU for those services.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
You know how sometimes we receive calls asking to donate to fire or police? And so is there other revenues that the fire or police have?
Outside of getting grants,
Yeah,
that, I mean, we
like
try.
other
we
donors or something like that?
Occasionally. We had recently just got a grant. We got a gear grant this year, and we got a grant that we could get some road flares to help make it safer for our personnel. But we have a grant writer now, which is phenomenal because she is like on every single thing
That's
for
really
us
great.
that comes up. So hopefully to be more successful.
Very good. And then, just again, like, even for the police, and this might be for you, Mr. Baumann, are there donors, like big donors, that are adding to the dollars that the Public Safety Department has? Are you?
I'm not aware of any, if
Mm-mm,
that's a
okay.
question.
Okay, all right. And you would be, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
We hope
Yeah. So for the Stop the Bleed training, how many employees are you hoping to get through?
It's going to depend on availability of our instructors, but our goal is to get through the entire city. I think there's a desire to help the schools and get the teachers that are willing and able to do that, so we can get as many people educated as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, is it something the high school students could get trained on too? Just curious.
That would probably have to be a discussion with the school, but we would train anybody. We train anybody at first aid, CPR. The more people that understand this, that are comfortable providing that kind of service, would be a huge benefit.
Yeah. And then do you charge for the CPR and first aid classes to the public?
So they just cover our personnel costs,
Okay.
just enough to just make the people cover the cost for that. We have all our own equipment, and we provide quite a few services for that.
I have a comment and then I have a question and then a comment. Any thoughts on, I'm passionate about the car seat checks. So can you remind me, does our fire department offer car seat checks?
The police do.
The police offer the car seat checks, and is that if the person comes in, or do they maybe hold sessions where they're offering car seat checks? Oh, we don't know. Okay, we do know. Hi. Sure, thank you.
We have 2 officers that have been through the child safety passenger training, and they're certified instructors, certified to check car seats, and they're on the website, on the city website, their information, and they just call the number on the website, and they can set up an appointment, and the officer will either go to them or they can come to the department. In addition, we've had several other events, like downtown events, where officers have been available to do car seat checks during those times.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've been trained, it's lapsed, but I was trained before as a car seat technician, and just very passionate about, again, the children that they say get left behind because they're not in the appropriate boosters. And so I was thinking about you all, because you will be on the scene if there's, when there's crashes and things like that occurring. But do we ever, and that could be the police as well, but ever any thoughts on those, I think it's forgotten children, but some car seat safety checks at the schools during pickup and drop off, or I'm just wondering.
I think it's something we could offer. The hard part is anytime we get a call, we'd have to stop right in the middle of our process or training and have to go to something like that. But that's certainly something we could look into
Okay.
and see if that's something we could offer.
Just asking, because I'm an advocate. And so I got Stop the Bleed trained too, so I think it's great. And one of the benefits of Stop the Bleed is sometimes we don't know what to do, and a person, if they're bleeding out and we can't stop the bleeding, then they're going to die. And so I think it's great that you're able to offer Stop the Bleed, and for employees or for people that might be interested, because it's like that's one of the parts that completes the circle as we talk about active assailant situations, or again, situations where you want to save a life but don't have those tools to be able to do it. So I just think it's great, what you all do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay. A couple of things. One is I'm so glad you're working with Michigan Works for on-the-job training and supporting current staff. I know with some employers, they do work in collaboration with like the intermediate school districts to get into high schools. So maybe that's a budget piece that we can tap into with federal funds they haven't expended. So just flagging that as a question. 2 is a question that gets back to the general fund and the computer services. So your enhanced billing piece is what prompted this, and then knowing that we've taken income tax collection online, that has been helpful. I noticed I think it's under computer services or information services, it's a 22% increase in this incoming year. So my question is, are we purchasing systems that are gonna make our operations easier or enable us to collect funds more easily? It's just a question mark of where that increase is coming from. And maybe that's for later, but it just popped in my head. And then the last thing, only because I'm not seeing anyone say, I know that one, thank you, Mayor, for bringing up some of the public safety, including our amazing fire department and the services we provide campus, recognizing some of the increased developments. And we have time to plan together, because that hotel, I don't think it's going to be operational till what, 2029, 2027? So we got a little bit of time to plan, but we want to be ready and working with them.
Other questions? Somebody down here? Yes, sir.
How many runs per day on average in a given year?
That's going to vary.
Okay.
Okay, so ask me that during football season,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you 40 to 50.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you today, anywhere's from maybe 15 to 25.
So I'm not sure people necessarily have an appreciation of how many calls your department answers. And I wonder whether it's worth a paragraph in the narrative in the budget describing those numbers, because they're very large and they have been growing. And people should know how much your team is on the road.
Well, I think that is a very good point to bring up, because we can say we have this many runs, but I counted in 2024, if we count each piece of apparatus that leaves the station, we have 12,643 times we left the station in 1 year. Okay, so our run volume might be, 7,000 or 8,000, but because we run a truck and a medic when we have a significant call, so we can put appropriate resources on the scene to provide the highest level of care, we are rolling a lot out the door. And maintaining 3 medics is, we do it mostly to keep all our resources so we don't have to farm them out, but we've still been caught. They just kind of come in a row and you can't keep up. So these guys work really hard, and a lot of the times the whole call takes over an hour by the time you do your paperwork and you get out the door and you repack and you get back in the station. And if you're doing 12 runs in a day and you got to eat, you're supposed to do training, you're supposed to keep your equipment clean, it takes up the majority of their day.
And I know there's lots of ways you can slice and dice the measurements, right? You just described some of them just now. And you could spend pages doing that, but some concise summary just to help
Okay.
people understand just how
Absolutely.
much work and how packed your days are. I think would be
Okay.
helpful.
If
Okay,
I
anything
can,
else?
I'd suggest that we do some kind of communication with regard to those statistics. So in the dialogue or someplace, because it's good to have it in here, but I don't think a lot of our population is going to read through our budget document. So
That's fair.
getting it out there to the public, I think this is very important information for them to have.
Okay, we all set here? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next budget is Community Development Block Grant with Matt Apostle, and is Heather joining you, or are you doing? And that's on page
Just
214 of your budget document too.
Heather's the ringer if needed, but
You're on your own, Matt.
we'll see how it goes. Good evening, council. My name is Matt Apostle. I'm a Community and Economic Development Specialist here with the City of East Lansing. I'm here tonight to speak with you regarding the fiscal year 2026 Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, budget recommendation that was as drafted by East Lansing's Community Development Advisory Committee. First, I would like to take the time to thank the CD Advisory Committee for their hard work this winter in learning all about CDBG, reviewing all of our applications for fiscal year 2026 funding, and drafting the budget recommendation before you today. As a reminder, CDBG is a federal grant intended to benefit low to moderate income East Lansing residents through individual and neighborhood investment. Typically, East Lansing, as an entitlement community, receives between $400,000 and $500,000 annually. Keep in mind that this is a federal grant. With this in mind, as of today, the city has not been informed as to what our fiscal year 2026 grant amount is. This is typical for many fiscal years in the past, but according to the National Community Development Association, we have been told that we will probably find out our fiscal year 2026 entitlement amount by May 15th of this year. But yes, if that amount were to change, currently we are budgeting based on the fiscal year 2025 CDBG budget amount because we had to craft our budget recommendation without knowing what our budget amount was. If that amount were to change from fiscal year 2025 to fiscal year 2026, the CD Advisory Committee has recommended that we would increase or decrease our total amount proportionally. Looking at that budget recommendation, the committee is recommending that all groups that applied for fiscal year 2026 funding receive some level of funding, and that the public service portion of the budget, which is, as a reminder, capped at 15% of the total grant amount, receive the maximum amount allowable under the CDBG grant. There is also a 20% cap on the administrative costs associated with running the program, but staff is not recommending that we go all the way up to that cap. Due to limited available funding, I also want to note that the Department of Public Works CDBG Sidewalk Project, as well as the Parks, Recreation, and Arts Northern Teal Trail Extension Project, received significantly less than their original CDBG budget requests. However, staff are currently investigating where additional CDBG funding might be available from previous fiscal years to fully support these infrastructure projects. If we find additional funds, we would bring those for substantial amendment to City Council in the future. I am happy to answer any questions you may have on this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
I have a question. For the leasing support program with the security deposit and first month's rent, am I saying that right? Or is it just, that's it?
It's security deposit and first month rent, yes.
Okay, thank you. Do we get the security deposit back, or does the person get the security deposit back?
So there's some interesting calculations that go into that. Essentially, we provide it directly to the property owner, and then we would receive it back from the property owner. But we would only reimburse ourselves for as much as we gave in security deposit. Since the tenant is giving a match, in theory, the tenant is able to recoup a portion of their security deposit. We provide examples on the website and our program guidelines on how that can play out in different scenarios, but we want the tenant to still have some ability to recoup security deposit costs so that they essentially have skin in the game.
Okay, thanks.
I just wanted to flag for our city manager, if it's not already on your long list of to-dos, that we stay very close on any federal program like CDBG with our federal delegation, making sure they know we expect these allocations and get ahead of any possibilities there could be a shift, so.
Okay, anything else? Okay, let's move ahead. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
So our next contestant.
Excuse me just a second, and thank you, Matt, thank you for helping me to cut the ribbon on the tattoo parlor on MAC.
Anytime.
So, for the benefit of the public, yes, I was offered a free tattoo, but I declined. Okay?
I thought maybe you were going to model it.
But good people, go get a tattoo if you like tattoos.
That's really exciting, George.
So our next contestant is Heather Pope on behalf of the Downtown Development Authority budget, pages 309 through 315.
That's better.
All right.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Brookover and council members. Heather Pope, Community and Economic Development Administrator. I'm here tonight to present to you the Downtown Development Authority fiscal year 26 budget. I believe this is the first time we've presented the Downtown Development Authority budget to City Council. It's always part of the overall city budget, but it was requested that we go into a deeper dive into the budget and how they spend their tax capture funds that they receive. So I'll walk through the revenue. The DDA captures property taxes in TIF 1, TIF 2, and then they also capture a DDA millage throughout the entire district. TIF 1 is, if you think of where the Marriott is and the MAC parking garage, that is TIF 1. That was the beginning, the start of our DDA here in the city of East Lansing. And we capture the TIF. It's a 79% capture, and is to strictly pay for debt. So it's a pass-through that you'll see on the expense side of the DDA that goes directly to the parking department. We also receive, this current year, we're gonna receive $139,395. That will be the pass-through. TIF 2 is the larger portion of our district. That covers from Hillside Court to the west, all the way down to Hagedorn. There's one caveat with that. We do not capture TIF between Bogue and Hagedorn. We only capture a millage. So it's TIF 2 is from Hillside to Hagedorn. We only capture the TIF 2, we only capture TIF between Hillside and Bogue. From Bogue to Hagedorn, it is strictly the millage. So TIF 2 this year is going to be $2,110,960. I will point out this is an increase of $1,355,000 from the previous fiscal year budget. This is due to a brownfield plan coming off. This is related to brownfield plan number 11, which is the Park District project. That TIP plan actually was a 9-year plan, that brownfield TIP plan was, and it actually, because of the value and the capture, was paid off in 6 years. And so during that time, the DDA allowed the brownfield to capture that TIF, and now the DDA is capturing that TIF. So that's why we're seeing that substantial increase. And then we have our DDA millage that we will capture this year, and that is $324,445. We also estimate $20,000 in interest, and then you may not be aware, but our Downtown Development Authority, meaning myself and my staff, manage the trash for the downtown businesses in every block, from the 100 block to the 500 block. And so that because that program has grown, we've set it up as its own fund within the DDA, and so you'll see where it says charges for services, DMWIM, which is Downtown Material Waste Management Program. You'll see we receive charges from the users in the amount of $145,200, and we have expenses on that side of $145,200. So any questions on the revenue?
So all trash services?
Yeah,
Like
so
dumpsters?
what it is because the way our downtown is set up, most properties are billed, lot line to lot line. So they do not have the ability to put a dumpster or have trash service. So within all of our parking structures, except in the 500 block where we have a standalone room, we have trash rooms, and they're monitored 24/7. We have a camera system, a key fob system, so not anybody can walk in. Yeah, so we invoice, we clean, all of those types of things. So it's my favorite part of my job. Okay, moving on, personnel expenses. This year, we're budgeting $217,710 in personnel expenses. And the late winter of 2023, our Downtown Development Authority went through a strategic planning process. During that process, that was the board's decision to hire a DDA executive director. And so a portion of that is for the DDA director position, about $180,450. The DDA also allocates $10,000 to our finance department as they do all the financing for and pay the bills on behalf of the DDA and capture all the TIF and do all of that. So it's an accounting fee. The DDA also supports a portion of our arts programming and creative placemaking specialist position. That's a shared cost between the DDA and the planning department. DDA pays for an intern for the summer for Alvaro Fresco. We also are going to be hiring another intern to work with our arts and placemaking specialist, and the DDA is going to cover a portion of that. That intern will mainly be working in scene as we're starting to ramp up some programming in that facility. And then the DDA also pays worth 5 hours a week where we use the parking staff. We partnered with the parking department a few years ago, and so if we have an issue in one of the trash rooms, they'll go down and check it for us. They also, during the summer months, power wash and sweep them out, the trash rooms for us. So that's all part of the personnel cost. For operating, it's quite large this year, $1,015,505. Within that operating cost budget, we have our municipal services agreement. So the DDA is allocating $297,515 to the Department of Public Works, and this is for the maintaining of the downtown, the cleaning, the staff time, all of that. We also, and some costs for cleaning supplies and for the equipment that's used, there's equipment charges. We also, the current fiscal year was the first year we started doing this. The DDA is now paying for the lights, the that are within the DDA district. And so this year, we're allocating $118,275, and those funds go strictly to DPW through a monthly transfer, and DPW pays those bills on behalf of the DDA. The East Lansing Police Department, or this current fiscal year, we started allocating overtime for Albert Al Fresco, but we've also included in fiscal year 26 $200,000 for overtime for the police during the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and busy weekends to help with that overtime cost. And the DDA is allocating $74,790 to the police social worker position. They felt that this was a very important position for the downtown to provide, and the social worker can provide those services. So, any questions on any of this so far? Yes.
I just want to confirm, so the East Village area,
Yes.
even though it's in the DDA, is not receiving any TIF, right?
No,
Is that what you
we
said?
only capture the millage off that, no TIF. So
Okay.
if there's a new development within that district, the DDA does not capture that.
Okay, and this may be before your time on this, but is there a reason why we excluded that area from the TIF when we expanded from Collingwood to Hagedorn?
Right, so at the time, the idea when they expanded and we're gonna capture that millage was related to, we were using some of the funds to do a study on the floodplain in that area. And it was costly, so the DDA took that millage and allocated it towards that study, which in the end changed that floodplain, which was a saving to the businesses. And at the time, it was more of a tool to support the businesses in that area. There was, with anything, when you talk TIF, people, we have the county and that we're capturing that. So at that time, the agreement was that we would capture just the millage in those areas to do that study. And then there's other projects that have been offset the cost through that. When MDOT went through and redid Grand River several years ago, we did some additional work along the area, and the DDA paid for it, and it was through this TIF that we paid for it, so.
And when we did that, I do remember that we committed to use that
Yes.
additional TIF in that area. But I'm still not clear on why we excluded what became East Village, because it wasn't East Village at that point. in
Right,
time.
no, it was not.
And then, I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but TIF number 11,
Or Brownfield Plan 11?
that's going to expire, the
It
Park
did.
District?
Yep.
Did. Okay,
So the
that's
final
additional
payment,
revenue.
yep, the closeout letter's gone out, so that's why we're seeing such a substantial increase on the revenue
And
side.
then my question to you is, in terms of our TIF on Center City, has the expiration date come closer?
City Center, the
Yeah.
original City Center?
No, Center City, so the senior housing and.
So the capture on that is for debt, and that will be for some time, since it's a newer project.
I know it's a long time, but I know the value has increased. so
Right,
I'm
no,
wondering-
it's not on my radar that at this point,
Okay.
but yeah, that's something, I'd be more than happy to pull the information from the Brownfield plan and let you know what the
Okay.
estimates are.
Got it.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So just to recap, the property taxes of 2.5 million is the sum of the TIF 1, TIF 2, and the DDA millage, right?
Yes,
Okay.
so yes, that table on the side that shows property taxes is
Yep.
TIF 1, TIF 2, and the millage,
Yep.
yes.
But those TIF amounts, are they broken out in the narrative?
Yes, they're probably not. I can email you those breakouts.
So in future, I think it'd be helpful to have that in the narrative, to break that out.
Oh, wait, they are in the
Are
narrative.
they?
Yep, they are in the narrative, now that I think of it. So on page 311, yes, thank you. 311,
Oh, yeah, there it is.
yep, they're broken out there.
Okay. And then you mentioned that the TIFs capture county taxes, right? That the city would not be able to capture if the TIF weren't in place.
Correct.
I would be interested in knowing how much money that is. So how much those TIFs capture in taxes that the city could not otherwise capture.
Okay.
I think that would be an interesting number, also potentially to include in here.
Okay, yep.
Thank you.
I'll work with the Andrea, the city treasurer, and putting that
Great.
together. Okay.
Thanks.
Yep.
Other questions? Thank you very much. Thanks for all your hard work.
Yep.
Mr. Bellman.
So our last presenter, who's been waiting patiently, is Caleb Sharrow, who will be presenting on the parking or automobile fund, and that's on pages 245 through 249.
Good evening, Council. Caleb Sharrow, Downtown Parking Administrator. We're going to go over fiscal year 26, brief summary of the budget. The budget shows revenues and expenses balanced at just under $6.2 million. Included in the budget for fiscal year 26 are the following. 15-minute grace period in all 6 gated parking facilities, a 50% validation discount for East Lansing businesses, 50% discount multi-use vouchers for patrons, discounted monthly parking permits, partial funding for additional ELPD social worker to focus efforts on homeless outreach in the downtown, contribution to the Downtown Management Board for marketing the downtown, a contribution to Art and Placemaking Fund for art in, on, and around the parking facilities, a contribution to Reserve Fund, which our parking master plan recommends we put 15% of revenues into each year. And also there are fee adjustments from the parking master plan recommendations to optimize parking distribution across garages. If you recall from fiscal year 25 budget process, we did not implement the changes recommended from the parking master plan due to staffing changes that we had at leadership level. So now we are going to be implementing or proposing implementing those rate adjustments for the downtown. And lastly, there's a fee adjustment to decrease permit control card fee from $20 to $10. We were able to find proximity cards that are less expensive. And so those are all reflected in the fee schedule. Happy to answer any questions and take a deeper dive into anything if you wish.
Questions? Yes,
I
sir.
have a question. How elastic is parking demand with respect to price? So you're proposing to change the fee schedule, right, to get more people parking in Division. I think you dropped it by 25 cents there and increased by 25 cents in Abbott.
You said Division?
Yeah,
I had trouble
Division.
hearing you there.
Yep.
So yeah, I could go over the different fee adjustments if you wish, but Division in particular, the proposal was to go down 25 cents per half hour from 75 to 50 cents.
So my question is, how much traffic do you think that's going to, how much parking do you think that's going to divert from one garage to the other?
Yeah, you don't know until you implement it. It's a common parking strategy for adjusting fees based on demand so that you increase higher demand areas and you can decrease lower demand areas. Division garage, our lowest utilized parking garage. Until we do it, we do our biannual counts and then we would know whether we're having success in that. But it can also just be that particular year. So it's a tough thing. That's why we have consultants analyze the parking system and give us that guidance.
So suppose you had another program that you wanted to spend money on, right, as part of the parking fund, and you had to increase rates to cover that program. Would you have any basis for saying that parking demand would decrease substantially? Or decrease enough to offset the increase? Or do you just not, you just have to try it to see what happens? Is that right?
Yeah, you have to try it to see what happens. We do have capital if we had a project, so we would budget for that and then just see if we have reserved funds or if we're able to just fund that particular project. So we wouldn't necessarily be able to say for sure whether it's going to pay for, like the fee adjustment would pay for that project. Is that what you're?
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, we wouldn't know for sure unless we were able to see the numbers after implementing a change.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, staff, for bearing with us tonight and for all your hard work.
Mayor, I do have some final questions.
Of whom?
The city manager.
Sure.
Um,
You're all set.
And it looks like Diane's gone, is that correct? Oh,
Yes.
no, I see Chief Brown now. My request is, unless it's in a page that I've missed, there is a further breakdown of the police budget that council receives each year. And my ask first is it in the packet? Is it in the binder?
It's in the
And-
front section of the binder.
Okay. What page is it on?
It's the loose in the
Okay,
slide
thank you. In the
pocket.
front part, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does that, is there discussions on more decibel machines?
So we haven't any additional discussion on it. The research that was done to date is twofold. There's only one state that we identified in the U.S. that certifies officers for the use of decimal readers, and that is New Jersey. We are continuing to look at what avenues we have. Part of our consideration is flock cameras in areas that we know we're having problems. Flock cameras have the ability to identify a gunshot, so we're having conversations on whether they could do increased noise from vehicles. So that would alert police to kind of head over to that area to address that. So we're looking at that as one avenue, but there is, decimal readers, as I understood.
It's just not gonna work for.
Yeah, you have to wait until the
noise.
vehicle
Yeah.
stops.
Yep.
Take the decimal reading, and that's not where we're having most of the problems, as I understand. It's while they're driving.
Yeah. And then for the cameras, the flock cameras, would that be in the police budget, or what budget would that come out of?
That's part of the grant that we have submitted for
Okay.
congressional appropriations, along with advanced peace. So additional funding would extend our contract with advanced peace, as well as pay for the flock cameras and some overtime for police on their own peace program that they have.
All right, and then speed bumps. Is that being explored, and what budget would that come out of?
So speed bumps, we've had conversations right now. I think White Hills may be the only location that has what we call raised crosswalks that act as speed bumps. And so that's part of a communication I just sent out to a resident, White Hills, copied all of you. We're looking at how do we address a lot of the complaints that we have regarding traffic. And then we want to take some of the infrastructure or traffic control devices recommendations back to the Transportation Commission to get their feedback on some of those recommendations. So
Right.
it's in progress.
Thank you. And there is a street, it's near Little Caesars, into maybe that's the Bailey neighborhood, but they've got a speed bump there, because, anyway, I know that, because I go
Okay.
down that street, just for reference on other speed bumps. And my final request, I like to have understandings, I have a different understanding on the property taxes. And so, and I like our audience, I like us to make decisions that are rooted in the actual facts. And so, can you give us a surrounding area property taxes kind of order? Because in my experience in search for homes, our property taxes are higher in City of East Lansing. And so, but I don't want to say, oh, this is my opinion and this is someone else's. I just want the facts. Like, do we have higher property taxes in the City of East Lansing in comparables, to other places or not?
So I was having an intern in my office work on updating a chart that existed probably in the 2019, 2017 timeframe, and with accurate information, I'll go back and see where we're at with gathering that data.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I also have a question for the city manager. So we are facing a $3.1 million deficit, $3.1 million use of fund balance prospectively in the 26 budget. That's a lot, especially given some of the other constraints we're under. And I wonder if you could preview for us the plan for addressing that in the coming weeks and months.
So I can preview that I'm working with staff to identify some revenue opportunities as well as some additional cost containment items, but I have not completed that list or what that looks like, so I'm hesitant to really delve into that until we get further along.
And that's great. That's sort of all I was asking for. But we can anticipate a proposal along those lines as part of this budget cycle.
Yeah, so I will provide you a laundry list of options for either, again, revenue or cost containment with some recommendations that council could adopt effectively for the fiscal year 26, or if some of the items may take us into 27, but at least start setting the path to change the trajectory of the use of reserve in order to cover expenditures that are exceeding our current revenue.
Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Meadows?
One thing for the city manager, the city council years ago, I don't remember how long ago, but installed speed undulations on Spartan Avenue. So in the 2 blocks that are north of Grand River, I think you can see how those work. That's at 25 miles an hour, you don't even notice you went across them. If you're going faster, then you notice it. And on Stoddard, so there's a report somewhere in the history here from the Transportation Commission and the City Council in the installation of those. Those were an attempt to slow down traffic through those areas. And we tried that again on Harrison, where we put kind of a little island in the middle. That did not work well and was removed after a number of years. So there's some report on that too that you might want to take a look at.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Meadows, second by Altman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, staff, for being here.